Hello, my friends. Thank you for sticking with me. So what I'm going to do here, right, as you've seen a couple times before, is work through an optional additional example. So if you make it to the end of our required class videos and you're just desperate for a little bit more economics, you can satisfy that desperation in this video. If you are not desperate for more economics, feel entirely free to not watch this video and meet me in class for more examples in person. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this example is to look at, because we haven't done this yet, right, try to find our optimal long-run choice of output for some firm, given a long-run cost function and a price, right? So this is going to represent a long-run cost function because we have a cost of 0 if you're producing nothing, right? This makes sense if you're able to freely exit the market, right? If you don't have to pay for capital regardless of whether you produce. We've got a price that's just equal to 40, right? Doesn't depend on Q, because we're going to imagine that this is a firm in a competitive industry, right? So that this particular firm has no power to set the price. No matter how much they produce, they sell their output for $40 a piece. And we're going to have this kind of ugly function in here, right, just to keep things interesting. Essentially what's happening here, we've got this Q plus 8 to the 4/3. I should write that a little more clearly. 4/3. Right, we've got a Q plus 8 here because we might imagine that in order to start producing any output, you have to have some amount of startup cost, right? So we're going to jump, the cost of producing a little tiny bit of output is going to be more than 0. Okay, sound good? So how do we want to start, right? What do we want to do to approach this problem? Well, I'd like to start by drawing a little picture. So we know we've got some output, right, Q, some amount of output we're going to choose. We've got dollars, and we want to figure out how much output is worth producing. The thing that we already know here is our price of 40. Right, doesn't depend at all on how much we produce. So essentially what we're going to want to ask is, we're going to want to produce output up until the moment that producing additional output starts to lose us money. Right, in other words, we're going to want to produce until price equals marginal cost. The first thing here, price equals marginal cost for optimal output. I'll say if any, right? In other words, if we're going to produce output at all, we're going to produce the level where price equals marginal cost. Okay, cool. So we know the price. All we need now is our marginal cost. So what's the marginal cost of producing Q units of output? Well, it's just going to be the change in total cost, right, that comes from change in output. So it's going to be dC of Q with respect to Q. This in turn, of course, is going to be the derivative of this thing right here. So that's going to be 3 times 4/3, right, bring the power down, times Q plus 8 to the 4/3 minus 1, right, to the 1/3. We preserve the Q plus 8 here, right, this is just basic chain rule. Beautiful. The 3's cancel, so we're going to be left with 4 times Q plus 8 to the 1/3. Great. We take a moment to think about what this means, right, so we can put it on our picture here. We're going to say, you know what, I'm going to color code this blue. I think it's easier to see, so I'm going to say marginal cost Q is going to be 4 times Q plus 8 to the 1/3. Right, couple of things to notice. The first thing is that when we're not producing anything, our marginal cost is not going to be 0, right? What's it going to be? Well, if I plugged in 0 for Q, this would be 4 times 8 to the 1/3. 8 to the 1/3 is 2, so that means my marginal cost curve starts at 8. The other thing you notice is that this thing is upward sloping, right? The higher Q is, the higher Q plus 8 to the 1/3 is, the higher my marginal cost is, right? So I'm going to have some marginal cost curve like this. This make sense? When I set marginal cost equal to price, I'm going to be finding a Q right here. Beautiful. Okay, so let's do it. So we're going to say marginal cost equals price. That's going to give me 4 times Q plus 8 to the 1/3 equals 40, right, which is our price. And now we just solve for Q. So we'll say Q plus 8 to the 1/3 equals 10, right? Q plus 8 is going to equal 10 cubed, which is 1,000. Right? 10 squared is 100, times 10 again is 1,000. So then Q is going to equal 1,000 minus 8 is going to be 992. Beautiful. Are we done? We're not quite done, right? Because we're not sure yet whether we're better off producing 992 units of output, right, where marginal cost equals price, or if we're better off not producing any output at all, right? Because remember, the first little bit of output cost us something to produce. So how are we going to answer that question? Well, if this was the short run, we would say that it's worth it to produce as long as price is greater than average variable cost, right? In other words, as long as we're getting some consumer surplus from producing output. Now, we're going to use exactly the same logic in the long run, but remember that in the long run, average variable cost and average total cost are exactly the same thing, right? Because the cost of producing 0 units of output are 0. So we'll say produce if, right, price is greater than or equal to average variable cost of Q, which in this case equals average total cost of Q in the long run. Right? Beautiful. So how are we going to find our average total cost? Well, we're simply going to divide our total cost by the amount of output, right? So we'll say ATC is going to equal C of Q over Q, right? If we're producing more than 0, this is going to be 3 times Q plus 8 to 1/3 over Q. Okay, beautiful. Now at this point, we have a little bit of an issue, because since I've got this Q plus 8 to the 1/3 bit, to the 4/3 over Q. Because I've got Q plus 8 to the 4/3 over Q, this isn't going to simplify nicely, right? It's hard to divide out Q plus 8 to the 4/3 by Q. However, what we care about is whether we're going to have our average variable cost of Q greater than or equal to price when we're producing our optimal output, right? Not just at any given Q, but at Q star. So we can simply plug in our Q star of 992 into this expression, right? So we can say that our average total cost of producing 992 units of output is going to be 3 times 992 plus 8 to the 4/3 over Q, right? Over 992. So what's this going to be? Well, 992 plus 8 is 1,000, right? 1,000 to the 1/3 is going to be 10. So 1,000 to the 4/3 is going to be 10,000. So this is going to be 3 times 10,000 over 992. Right? This is going to be approximately 3 times 10,000 over 100. Which would be, what if I take 100 out of 10,000, I would get 3 times 100, or 300. My goodness, I don't know what I'm thinking about. 992 is not approximately 100, it's approximately 1,000, right? So then 3 times 10,000 over approximately 1,000 is going to be approximately 30, right? Which we know is going to be less than 40. So we can double check this. Actually divided 30,000 by 992, we would get 30.24, right, which is about 30. So is it going to be worth it for us to produce output? Yes, right, because we have an average variable cost equal to our average total cost, which is equal to $30.25, right, but we're selling each unit for $40. So this means that on average, we're coming out about $9.75 ahead of where we would be if we're not producing at all, right? Our average total cost, in other words, is still going to be increasing, right? It's an increasing function of Q, but we're going to end up with an average total cost that is below, looks something like this, right? That's going to be below 40, it's going to be at 30.25, 30.24, when we're producing our optimal level of output. This makes sense? So, are we better off producing? Yes. Are we making a profit? In this case, yes. How big is our profit? Our profit is this area right here, right? Our average profit of $9.25 a unit times the total number of units we're producing, which is 992 units. Okay, beautiful. So, right, just to finish this off, ATC of 992 is going to be greater than price, is going to be less than our price of $40, so worth it to produce. Okay, wonderful. Hope that was helpful. Looking forward to talking to you about this soon.